Radio Retro Future.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bansard of Radio Retro Future, and I recently got a request to respond to a video by the Interior Design Hub, another YouTube channel who does, well, surprisingly, videos on interior design, and they actually have a video on steampunk design styles. We're gonna be responding to that. I even got out my leather chair for this, you know, to kind of get you in the mood. Yeah, for those who are new to my channel or not familiar with what I do, I'm Bansard Bokel. I am a steampunk YouTuber with a dedicated YouTube channel where I have, among other things, the Steampunk Beginner's Guide, where I talk about, well, everything steampunk. I'm also a steampunk author who has his own series called the Association of Ishtar, and for which we also do a lot of illustrations, which also kind of like includes interior designs, I suppose. And so I'll also be using that expertise. I also do have a lot of steampunk costumes like that one over in the corner behind me. And a matter of fact, I also have characters inspired by costumes that we make, like this bookend. Two sets. I don't have the other one right now. These are all 3D printed, and you can get these bookends at any size.
If you've watched enough of my videos, you've noticed that with that maximalist and that vintage style, even the boho style, it all leads to this storytelling. And that's really steampunk in a nutshell. It's creating a story within your home and within your accessories, your furniture, your wall decor. Today, we are going over steampunk interior design style. Yes, you heard that right. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I actually didn't even know about this style until one of the viewers suggested it, and then I deep dived into it. I'm not gonna lie, I actually really love this style. I think it's fun, it's playful. I have this love affair with Alice in Wonderland, and it kind of gives me that just like otherworldly vibe. Doesn't really look like Alice in Wonderland, but just, you know, that like something from another place. And I do really love this style. So I'm excited to share it with you guys today. Let's set the scene, shall we? An attractive woman in a leather corset and crinoline. Add in a barrel gun and pilot goggles.
Things that a lot of people mention but never really connect the dots is what is steampunk, right? Now, see, talking purely about the aesthetic side of things, and I have some comments to say about that, especially when it comes to the fashion, because I know I have some steampunk people who make steampunk fashion, and I know they're probably crying in their pillows at this moment, because what she is showing of the costumes is like what I call the like the steam goth variant, the convention. So regarding the fashion, like what we're seeing here is like a kind of like what I often call the textbook variant of steampunk. You know, kind of like what you introduce people to, but the thing is that this is a very convention-oriented fashion, and unfortunately it has barely evolved since, well, let's say 2015, 2018. It kind of came to a stop, and it's very unfortunate because, you know, people experiment with so many ways of making the fashion. And after, well, I mean, 2020 probably, you know, when the great calamity happened, so to speak, you know, that scene kind of died out in a way because we were not allowed to have like all these social gatherings, and this is a very the costume culture is a very social space. It's very separate from what I do, for instance, from the illustrators, from the storytellers, from the authors, who have taken steampunk in very different directions, and that kind of caused the steampunk aesthetic, fashion-wise, to kind of like get stuck in time, as it were. Ironically, I know. For me, when I talk about steampunk, for the genre especially, I use the and fantasy, like Alice in Wonderland, is a very important theme there. Now, she also references other styles like boho and other stuff, but again, it's kind of that reference to pop culture and historicity. When it comes to steampunk, we talk about different things. And that's like one of the reasons that I not made a video, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to steampunk. There's so many forms of expression, and that's why my definition of steampunk is that it actually can mean 3 different things. And C is talking about the aesthetic, which includes the fashion. I mentioned the costume culture and that social aspect, and then there is the genre, which is for me cyberpunk in the past. Now, storytelling for me is very important. That's kind of like my aversion to the convention fashion, right? Because there's not really a part that I don't really like it. I have a very different style of steampunk costume that barely gets any exposure. That's displayed here. I mean, these are pretty old photos. These photos are from, I think, from the 2010s at least. That's how long I know these photos. So these photos are over 15 years old at this point, by the time I'm making this video. Which it's kind of like is a problem that people are still stuck in that time when the steampunk social culture took off. That convention culture started around 2012. And people are still referencing that golden age, that particular period, whether they know it or not. Because they go to Google, they search it in, and then they would find this. So I didn't check when this video was made. I should have done that. Because when you Google steampunk now, all you get is AI generated images. Right? And it's all the same thing. It's all that aesthetic from all the way back to 2012. It's 2024 now. So people are still imitating what the aesthetic was 12 years ago. And that's something that I really would like to see change. I think it needs to change in order to revive much of the costume culture as it stands, to renew interest, bring the artists back, bring the illustrators back. But yeah, let's go back to interior design.
A sense of what the style feels like. So the steampunk style generally refers to a Victorian era and all of the amazing inventions that came from that time period. Simply put, steampunk design is defined as a combination of both machinery and elegance. In terms of interior design, the steampunk style can be found in Gothic Victorian decorations and fashion.
Again, photo from 2012, by the way.
The Industrial Revolution to Gothic style, which in itself just creates this entirely new genre. What I found really interesting when I looked into the style, the steampunk interior design style, is that it's really an interesting and versatile style with a lot of different elements to it, but it's one that's really not that commonly explained like in the general public, so that's why I was really excited to actually do a video on this one. So there is this whole movement around the steampunk look, and you'll see it and go, oh yeah, I've seen stuff like this. Like, you'll recognize it when you see images of it, and this includes, steampunk furniture, wall art, dedicated chairs, and these are pieces that are both stylish and functional in nature, and it has that vibe of that machinery and elegance and Victorian all blended together. So when we're talking about the color scheme of this style, typically you'll find metallic tones, coppers, bronze, dark woods, and leathers. It is definitely a moody vibe. What I love about this is, say, in a living room with various dedicated decor items for the home, you could have a combination of a leather sofa, chairs, and then pair that with other Victorian furniture pieces to really help add to that steampunk look. So also consider, bookcases, cabinets, different things in metallic tones to offset that leathers. It really, when you just describe it without imagery, I find it has that industrial design style feel to it, but the Victorian undertone actually completely changed.
Alright, before we talk about furniture specifically, she calls out a lot of specific elements, but this is a common problem. People do not connect the dots. And overall, when you look at steampunk stuff, again, many of these are old photos. These are photos from all the way back to the early 2010s. So more contemporary steampunk examples to showcase, but because of how search algorithms work on the internet, this is the stuff that people keep finding. That's an internet problem, and this is also the reason why steampunk has become something of a meme, unfortunately. Yes, there's a lot of use of industrial stuff. If you go to an industrial store, you'll be able to find a lot of stuff that will fit inside your steampunk interior. A lot of barren wood. Now, my style is very minimalist. She shows some interesting examples of that later on, which I want to show you. About the Victorian stuff is that when steampunk talk about Victorian, what they mean is the pop culture version of Victorian culture. The Sherlock Holmes version, the Downton Abbey version of that era. It's not actual Victorian stuff.
That are constructed from salvaged woods, machinery, rusted metals will really help create the overall look and feel of steampunk interior design style. And because the color scheme is usually more dark, you can really bring in a lot of darker accent pieces. Think blacks, browns, dark blues, etc. So what are some of the accessories that you can bring in to curate this look in your own home? So think of things like old maps. Those are really great for this style. Vintage murals, various machine parts, steam-powered machinery, funky, interesting, Victorian-esque, machinery-esque lamps and lighting. So steampunk is often, referred to like the inner workings of things. So when I think of steampunk, I automatically think of like the clock that you can see all this stuff through. I don't know why, but that was kind of one of the first things when I started going through the imagery of this. So, things that show like the mechanical nature of something would really be well suited in your accessories within the home. Again, it could be a clock that you see all the gears and stuff through.
Oh man, that's some nostalgia there. Like, again, some of those photos are, again, from like 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing. I read actually things about that. Like, there's like this company who specializes in office furniture, and they made like decor like that with the rafters and stuff. But yeah, that's an interesting point, is to kind of like one thing that I like to use as an example is here. Like, this is modern design, right? And people often compliment me, oh, this case looks amazing, because it kind of like has that rafter-esque aesthetic going on. But for the rest, like, look at it. It's like a flat piece of plastic with glass, and that's it. And one of the charms of like archaic technologies, like the clockwork, is that you can see how it moves. And especially for men, we like moving stuff, and you can see like all this stuff. Like, there is nothing interesting about looking at this, It's this thing is here to provide content, and that's it. And the awesome thing about like this globe, for example, is that interior, that's fascinating, right? The fun thing about light bulbs. I mean, LED lights. No one's gonna look at a LED lamp. I mean, it's just like a tiny little thing, but a globe, you can actually see the wiring, the glowing stuff. And it's intriguing, right? When you move gears, everything starts moving. To see the interior of a machine and see its intricate workings. And that's why steam machines are so fascinating, with their cranks and pulleys and all that amazing material, right? I mean, you take the case off. The interior of a classic clock is more often, to us, more interesting than the exterior case. And that's why we often have glass surrounding clockwork, because then we can see the cogs within moving. Very important. Now, another thing that's fascinating about steampunk and its general appeal is, again, its references to pop culture, right? It's all familiar. It has little very abstract, like a lot of modern stuff is very angular, very abstract, very barren. It all needs to be utilitarian. And the Victorians are, well, we want decor, we want atmosphere, we want like the button stuff. Like, there's no real need for these buttons. Like, they do have some practical function, but I mean, we don't really care about that. So yeah, there's absolutely that about it. And I think that's like the appeal of industry, is just it's the fun thing about mechanisms is they tell a story, because you can see that gear is turning that other gear. Like this, I mean, even if you open it up, it's just a printing plate. You don't see anything going on. It's all abstract to a point that we cannot understand it. But, a child of 6 years old could generally understand how a clock works, right? It's very concrete. It tells you a story just by looking at it, and I think that's amazing, a part of the fascination. And of course the pop culture elements, the reference to the old vintage globes. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But there is also this magnet. Why Steampunk is so hard to talk about is just this magnitude of stuff that you could pour into it.
Well to this look. Another big feature with this is that moody lighting. So having like definitely creating an ambiance and having layered lighting in this look will really help you achieve the vibe that this look has. I feel like this look is, as much as it is about the pieces that you bring in, there is a total vibe to it with that dark aesthetic, as well as really, really moody lighting and like having different layers of lighting. I kind of feel like it has a bit of that Art Deco vibe where you really want to bring in multiple layers of lighting to really achieve this look. So some of the colors that you can bring in to help achieve this moody vibe is creams, browns, sepia tones, blacks, dark reds, dark greens, and of course metallic. One of the great things about the steampunk style is that you really want to lean more towards that vintage vibe. I've done a video on that. I will include the link below. And that really is the use of refurbished furniture. So you really want to try and avoid like having too much new stuff in the space. It's really, it's not that you can't bring it in Victorian pieces, because obviously there's like new stuff that's made to look old, but it definitely is one of those looks that like, that story.
So let's comment on that a little bit. Is the refurbished? Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I own is either self-made or refurbished. Like these chairs are all secondhand. Recently, I got more new stuff that was made to look old, as he says. Yeah, there is this myth I often hear, including when people talk about costumes. Oh, steampunk is too expensive for me to get into. Especially when it comes to my costumes. Like I have custom made, like this black coat in the corner over there. That was made by a friend of mine, Marina Marisha. She has a, atelier called O Marisha. She has made several of the best looking costumes. But, you know, that's me. But, you know, I have a YouTube channel dedicated, and for me, the clothing is an important part of my storytelling. Steampunk does not have to be expensive, especially if you know how to handle basic tools. I learned a lot about using tools by making my decor, like the stuff I made behind me. All of that wall is decorated by me. And I think she comes back, talks a little bit about brickwork later on. But I also made a video how to make faux brickwork. And again, it's time consuming. I mean, what I developed is not as time consuming. It's like a fun family activity that you could do like in a day's time. But yeah, there's a lot of cheats on how to bring about the steampunk decor.
Definitely is one of those looks that like that story, that vintage vibe, that refurbished vibe really goes really well with this look. Again, kind of sounds like that whole industrial vibe, but it does really blend well with the steampunk interior design style as well, having that raw, rustic kind of interior. So an architectural detail that if you have to use in this space that really looks fantastic is exposed brick. So if you do have exposed brick, you know, somewhere in your home, or you can bring it into your home, something with a dark undertone. And for me personally, like mind's eye goes to like a dark navy blue with like a metallic damask print on it would really, really look good in this particular style. I mentioned the maps, but another really good accessory to bring into the style is a terrestrial globe, something that's vintage, the older the better. And there's something about this worldly travel type vibe that goes with this look as well. So some key elements when you're thinking of other items to bring into your home, think, you know, steam trunks. The older the better.
Gotta
again,
love your
vintage,
steam trunks.
bring those in, they look
I do
really
like
great.
them.
Bringing in framed botanicals also really lend well to this look. There's a name for it, I believe it's herbariums. I don't even know how to say it, to be honest, but bringing in that look as well for artwork looks really, really great in this look.
I want to pause a little bit about this on this hair. Like, this is very simple, easy to do. Of course, one of the problems is that you need to have the space. Like, most of my apartment is all in the steampunk style. I'm not showing it because, well, I'm kind of like in the middle of trying to reinvent it, as it were. I had cats moving in since 18 months ago now, I guess, so that takes space, and I also destroyed some part of my furniture as well. I need to reinvent the stuff. I want to make a new video. You can look at the old interior of my flat somewhere. I made 2 videos to show how it has changed since. But yeah, since then, again, the coup happened. I've got cats, so yeah. But what I love about this particular picture is like the minimalist stuff. and the contrast there. You know, so you have like these ornate plant images, and then you've got like that empty table with a single book, right? That's also one of the problems with it, that you need to keep your surfaces as clean as possible, which with my lifestyle, like I work from home, I am a writer, I need space to store my books, etc. All that affects, you know, you gotta make your space in a way that you can use it. And with this particular stuff, you know, it really depends on keeping things, well, empty. I would recommend people keep getting as little stuff as you can. But, you know, when you have a family, when you have kids, or even pets, as in my case, that's a hard thing to maintain. So yeah, and also like the brickwork. Again, I didn't check when this particular video was made, but especially in the last 10 years, a lot of faux brickwork, wallpapers, ready-made brickwork, and there's so much variation available these days. I made mine simply out of a PDF, which is this compressed wood stuff. If you're gonna work with this stuff, if you're gonna, like I used a sanding machine to engrave the bricks inside of it. It's cheap, it's quite fast, the amount is that you need a lot of it, but I've got an entire video dedicated to that. But there are so many cheats in regards to especially brickwork. I love brickwork, and every time people come in for the first time, they think the brickwork that I made is real. It's not hard.
Great in this look. And what's really kind of interesting about that is you can really just make your own. You don't even have to like go out and source it. This could be a like great DIY that you do for your space. Sepia photos are great because it has that old charm to it, and there's something about a sepia tone because it's got that creamy undertone to it that really lends well to this look as well, and really trying to design with a lot of texture and layers throughout the space. So think of
for one, if you want to have like an idea of how that specific design style works, I have videos on Art Deco and Art Nouveau where I talk about interior design like this and the thought philosophy behind it and what the developers of those particular styles wanted to achieve. Second, around the sepia photographs. I don't know if this is true, but it's a widely held belief that the stereotypical brown steampunk is inspired by sepia photography. I don't know if that's true. Or like another theory is that it's the association with industry.
Things like leather and lace. So combination of that feminine and masculine, it does have that like industrial and Victorian feel kind of meshed together that really creates the steampunk design style. If you've watched enough of my videos, you've noticed that with that maximalist and that vintage style, even the boho style, it all leads to this storytelling. And that's really steampunk in a nutshell. It's creating a story within your home and within your accessories, your furniture, your wall decor. I think with steampunk, it can sometimes feel very themey, and that's okay. I think that's okay if this is the look you're going for. However, you can tailor it to your own personal styles, but definitely building on, you know, that vintage vibe, the story behind an item, bringing in pieces from travel, anything that looks old, worldly is really brought in because it's that combination of machine and Victorian era. So there's this whole kind of science-ness? No, that's not what I want to say.
Yeah, so again, and here's what I said, like they see like all the data points, but they don't connect the dots. Is because steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction. Much of steampunk and also gaslamp fantasy, the genres are heavily inspired by older science fiction stories. In particular, Verne is often noted as a source of inspiration, but also Da Vinci, the Renaissance inventor and artist. So there's a lot of references to vintage sci-fi. Especially from the 1940s, and like older Disney, like 40 Miles Under the Sea, which again is a Verne story. And Chitty Chitty Bang Bang very often is mentioned. And of course the movie Metropolis. So one term I would associate with steampunk is timelessness. Timeless design, in particular in male fashion. You know, there's just NCCC mentions like the feminine versus the masculine. It's absolutely true, right? The women, as they're depicted in steampunk, are often equipped with weapons and stuff. Like, I think that's more of a fashion thing. I don't think it works well for story writing, but for each their own. But definitely, there is this heroic aspect to all the steampunk characters. Now, maybe I should do like I made a video on steampunk characters in the past as part of the Steampunk Beginner's Guide series. It's probably one of the most watched episodes of that series as well, so go check that out. Again, I also talk a lot about color, and because it's such an important part of storytelling, and he also mentions this, rightly so, that steampunk again is a lot of storytelling. That's what I also mentioned about, you know, this versus like the old clockwork stuff. Yeah, it's interesting for me to talk about just because I'm really retreading old ground here from the early days when I started blogging about steampunk, where I talked a lot about the aesthetics and the storytelling aspects. Now I talk more about writing and role building and stuff. And that's something that I try to bring into my design. So that's one problem I'm having now, why I'm struggling with my interior at the moment. It's like, what part of my own world do I want to bring to life? So that's, well, not starting from scratch. That's also another thing, to keep it practical and not having to, because I just don't have the time anymore. I've got too much going on. I'm also moving into board gaming. A new miniature has just been finished, which I need to get printed, and yeah, we're also I'm talking with people about making dice. So yeah, that's also going to be an interesting one, and dice trays. So yeah, all of that. It's all going to be very interesting to see. So yeah, can have dice trays that fit this type of interior if all goes well. But yeah, and yeah, again, we're also looking at like what are we going to engrave it with. We're looking at logos from our setting, but we're also looking at map designs from inspired by our setting, which probably means I need to make a map of our alternate history worlds at some point, but it's too early for that, unfortunately. We'll see.
Scientific nature to the design style as well, because it's an era of, like I said in the beginning, inventions, creations, etc. So it's a fun and playful look that you can really kind of go from a various degrees of extremes on. I think you can kind of add it in subtly, or you can really go for that full maximalist look and bring in a lot of these items into your space to really, you know, curate this look. So this is a little different one.
Yeah, what I wanted to mention is, of course, you see a lot of, again, references to historical pop culture. Like here you see Art Nouveau. Often in some other parts you saw Art Deco. Here, again, you also see that this plain piano contrasted to the very busy backdrop of Art Deco, Art Nouveau inspired furnishings. This is a kind of like interesting mix of Art Nouveau with Gothic. That's kind of like what happened with, I struggle to call it Art Nouveau because it isn't, but it clearly has the influence of it. But it is this kind of dark, dreamlike interpretation of Art Nouveau designs, which, because Art Nouveau has all these organic curves and shapes, it kind of like what she mentions, the Alice in Wonderland feel, the dark Alice in Wonderland feel. And you see this very strongly in this image over here. And what I love in particular about images like this is this busy backdrop, but then this simple, plain, minimalist object at the center of it all. Kind of like a haven of rest in this busy environment.
For me, because like I said, it wasn't one that I had heard of in an interior design style, but once I did do some deep diving, I found so much information on it. There's so many beautiful pictures. It kind of felt almost like a movie set in some ways. Like, I feel like I've watched enough movies that I'm like, yeah, I've seen this vibe to it. And it's so fun. And I feel like if you like maximalism, if you like vintage decor, if you like Victorian decor, which I am going to do a video on the Victorian era as well, this really can be playful and yet still streamlined. And I feel like, you know, we ebb and flow with styles and taste, and I feel like this is something you could bring in through a lot of accessories.
So yeah, overall, I think this is a good introduction. Like she said, she's very new to it. And yeah, that kind of shows, right? At least to me, but like again, I probably think too much about steampunk to begin with. But yeah, it would be great to have like conversations about, you know, the current state of steampunk fashion and interior design styles. You know, a good place that I would say, Etsy is a good place to find a lot of lamps in this particular style. But then again, they're quite easy to put together if you know where to find the parts. And again, Etsy is a good place, but at least in the Netherlands, you can also just go to, like, industrial is really in vogue right now. So you can go to most stores and they have like industrial style lamps, chandeliers, all that stuff. It's very readily available, and that's also one of the things why kind of like the steampunk aesthetic is downhill, especially when it comes to costuming. People can just buy all these accessories on Amazon now, and now you see like people all wearing the same accessories for that reason, which is a great shame. Yeah, overall good video, but it also kind of like, to me at least, shows kind of like the problem that the steampunk aesthetic has, like a lot of photos from 10 years ago. Now, I mean, they're timeless, they're good interiors, no problem, that's not the issue. But it just, that's, it's time to move on at some point, and that's not happening. So that's what I'm working hard on right now. Again, I am working on a place to start with some of the more maximalist things. If you've got ideas for 3D printable designs that you'd like to see for your interiors, let me know. I'm definitely open to getting into stuff like that. The way things are going now, maybe in 5 years I might have an entire web store dedicated to game accessories, dice towers that you can also use as statues or sculptures. We definitely have, or miniatures can definitely be printed as sculptures. I really need to get back to painting those. But yeah, like I said, if you enjoy this type of content, I made some other reaction videos to other people who explore steampunk as an outside observer, and I respond to this in a similar way, where I talk like really in depth on the steampunk thing and stuff like that. And if you want to support that, you can do so on REAM, where I also post free short stories, and you'll get special access to fiction and ebooks to boot. The STL files for the higher tier members will be there as well for free to download. And for those interested in our upcoming book, The Casket Girls will also include all types of new miniatures and sculptures for your printing pleasure, and if there is enough demand, I might get them printed somewhere, one way or another. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna bid you adieu, and as always, make things your way. Good night.